train yourself to walk through fire without flinching, not because you're numb, but because you've risen above. This strength isn't about indifference, it's about self-mastery. That's what sets apart those who merely survive from those who dominate their path. There's a quiet gravity, an unshakable calm, in people who face turbulence and remain composed. They don't shout, they don't plead, they don't flail for attention. They simply stand, centered, unbothered, immovable. And this is not poetry. This is the hidden discipline behind those the world admires most. Let me show you. Years ago, on the overlooked side of Baltimore, a young man named Jordan Wells was raised in a neighborhood where survival was an achievement. Noise, tension, and broken systems surrounded him. The world assumed he wouldn't reach adulthood without a criminal record or a tragic end. But Jordan was cut from a different cloth. Not because he was louder, but because he was quieter. While others reacted, Jordan observed. While others swung back, he stood still. After losing his older cousin in a meaningless dispute, Jordan vowed something at just 15, that his emotions would never be another man's weapon. Not because he was hollow, but because he refused to give chaos the privilege of directing his path. He began, rising at 4:30 every morning, not to gain attention, but to train his body, and more importantly, his discipline. He'd run while the city still slept, not to escape it, but to outgrow it. The streets saw his silence as weakness, but that silence hid an intensity forged through restraint. When provoked, he smiled. When challenged, he worked harder in shadows. When life tried to derail him, he moved forward as if untouched. He treated obstacles like passing noise, heard, but never heeded. By his early 20s, Jordan had become an anomaly, while others from his block were tangled in cycles of conflict and regret. He was launching a startup out of a warehouse with no heating, no funding, no applause, but plenty of grit. It grew, slowly, into a supply chain firm that would one day serve major retailers. But even more than his financial rise, what struck people was his demeanor. Boardrooms full of seasoned veterans couldn't rattle him. Shouting never got a rise. Disrespect never earned a reaction. He had trained for this moment, not physically, but emotionally. That's why he was dangerous, in the most disciplined way. Because no one could figure out what affected him. And when people can't read you, they can't shake you. That's what I'm sharing with you now. In a world conditioned to chase reaction, to thrive on drama, to spiral from every slight, the one who remains unmoved holds the real power. When you learn to carry yourself as if nothing disturbs you, you reclaim your energy from every force trying to drain it. You stop dancing to someone else's chaos and start composing your own rhythm. People notice. They whisper, "What's he hiding? Why is she so composed?" That mystery becomes your armor, your edge, your advantage. This isn't about pretending nothing affects you. It's about wisely choosing what's worthy of your energy. Every insult doesn't need a response. Every jab doesn't deserve your attention. And every emotion doesn't have to be a performance. Sometimes, real power is the absence of movement. Jordan once said, "They lost interest when they couldn't get a rise out of me." That's it. When you deny others the satisfaction of seeing you disturbed, you win. Let them try to provoke. Let them throw shade. Let them misunderstand. But if you stay anchored, you grow while they waste. You rise while they reach. You lead while they chase. If you're tired of emotional exhaustion, worn down by every minor disturbance, shaken by every delay, stung by every word, then you must train your spirit to remain calm. Not to fake it, but to master it. Because once you take control of how you respond, no one else gets to decide how your life unfolds. There's another moment, one that seemed insignificant to most, that shaped another leader's path. A teenager named Darren Blake, 17 years old, working summer shifts at a hotel valet in Phoenix. One afternoon, a sharply dressed guest pulled up in a luxury SUV. No greeting, no eye contact. Just tossed the keys toward Darren with a casual, condescending. "Don't mess it up again, kid." Time stood still, Darren's jaw clenched, every part of him wanting to respond, to prove he wasn't to be talked down to. The other workers paused, expecting heat. But Darren surprised them all. He caught the keys midair, looked the man in the eye, nodded once, and moved with intention. He treated that vehicle like it was sacred, not to please the man, but to remind himself, dignity isn't given by others, it's chosen by you. Later, one coworker asked him why he didn't clap back. Darren simply said, "Because that man isn't part of my future." That choice, that restraint, became his foundation. Darren would later rise to become a sought-after architect, designing skyline-defining buildings. But he never forgot that moment. He often told his mentees, true power isn't how you react, but what you don't react to. When rivals cut corners, he refined his work. When clients questioned his value, he delivered results that spoke for him. When betrayal showed up, he strategized. Instead of lashing out, he understood. Every outburst costs energy. Every reaction sacrifices control. And every emotional misstep is leverage lost. Emotional discipline isn't soft. It's sharp, and once mastered, it becomes your greatest strength. The difference between those who react and those who rise comes down to this: precision, not in action, but in emotion. When you learn to aim your emotions, not spray them, you become dangerous in the best way. This isn't about bottling your feelings. It's about learning when to release them and when to simply hold still. Yulon Crow understood this early. He was never the loudest in the room, never the one to interrupt or dominate the conversation. In fact, many mistook his silence for insecurity. They thought he had nothing to offer, but what they failed to see was that he was always watching, always analyzing, always preparing. At just 22, Yulon joined a dying investment firm on the brink of collapse. Every meeting was a war zone of voices, managers arguing, executives pointing fingers, junior staff scrambling to look important. In the middle of it all, Yulon sat quietly. He took notes. He studied patterns. He waited. And then one day, as the leadership team stumbled through yet another failing proposal, Yulon calmly pushed forward a single page, a turnaround plan no one else had seen coming. No theatrics, no pitch, just clarity. Silence fell, and from that silence came transformation. Within a few years, Yulon had become CEO. He didn't scream his way up the ladder. He didn't seek applause. He simply let silence make the noise. Jalen used to say, everyone else was trying to be seen. I was trying to see, and that became his edge. While others performed, he prepared. While others reacted, he refined. While others panicked, he planned. Silence is not absence, it's presence. But it's a refined presence, a poised awareness. And in a world addicted to opinions, outrage, and endless noise, the one who can stay still becomes a force of nature. Jalen understood something vital. Silence is not weakness. It's weaponized patience. It's strategy wrapped in restraint. And it's the reason he was always 2 steps ahead. Because while others gave away their positions, their triggers, their intentions, Yulon gave away nothing but results. This truth is timeless. The one who talks least often controls the room most. Why? Because when you don't fill silence with noise, others lean in. They listen. They wonder. And that curiosity becomes your leverage. When you react to everything, your power is scattered. But when you observe, calculate, and choose your moment, your actions carry weight. Yulon didn't win because he was cold. He won because he was calm. And calm is not passive. Calm is aggressive clarity. Calm is the refusal to be manipulated by pressure or provoked by ego. Calm is mastery. There's another name you should know. Damian Price. Not born into wealth, not handed power. He earned it the hardest way, by turning his pain into purpose. Raised in Detroit, Chaos wasn't an event for Damien. It was the environment. Sirens were his lullabies. Poverty was his teacher. And pain was a daily visitor. But one night, after a brutal street fight left him battered and alone, Damien looked in the mirror and asked one question. What if this isn't punishment, but preparation? That question split his life in two, before and after discipline. From that night on, he rose at dawn, trained with no coach, studied with no guide, worked with no applause. His gym was an alley. His textbook was the streets. His fuel pain, properly harnessed. He didn't complain. He didn't post. He didn't wait for the world to believe. He just built one rep, one book, one step at a time. 10 years later, he stood on a national stage, receiving honors for launching one of the top fitness tech companies in the country. Reporters asked about his secret. He said, "Pain was my teacher, but discipline was my translator." That's the key. Pain doesn't shape you unless you shape it. Left alone, pain festers. But when paired with discipline, pain becomes power. Most run from it. The elite train with it. Discipline is not hype. It's not motivation. It's muscle memory for the soul. It's doing what's required long after you've stopped feeling inspired. It's pushing when you're exhausted. It's showing up when you're broken. It's honoring your future over your feelings. Damien used to say, every scar can become strategy if you choose to build, not break. That was his edge. Heartbreak didn't break him. It fueled him. Failure didn't define him. It redirected him. His wounds didn't become excuses. They became blueprints. Too often, people mislabel pain. They think it's a dead end. But in truth, pain is a doorway, one only the disciplined can walk through. Understand this. Life is not promising you comfort. It's offering you tools. And pain is one of the sharpest. But if you wield it, rather than fear it, you unlock growth no comfort can ever teach. Damien didn't avoid discomfort. He used it. That's the invitation for you too. Not to escape your story, but to build with it. Use what hurt you. Let it teach you precision. Let it mold your endurance. Let it show you how to rise when the ground breaks beneath you. The pain wasn't there to end you. It was sent to educate you, if you listen. So the next time you feel chaos press against your peace, the next time pain knocks at your door, or a storm rises in your heart, don't run, don't react, don't collapse, pause, breathe, and ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? Because in that question, you reclaim your strength. There's a certain calm that doesn't whisper, it commands. Not through intimidation, not through noise, but through sheer presence. It's the calm of someone who refuses to be owned by emotion. And no one embodied that calm more clearly than Natalia Cross, a defense attorney who rose from obscurity to prominence, not through volume, but through silence sharpened by clarity. Early in her career, Natalia walked into courtrooms where she was the youngest, the least connected, the most doubted. The system wasn't built for her. Her opponents had more resources, louder voices, deeper pockets. But none of that could rattle her, because Natalia didn't speak unless she had something to say. And when she did, the room always listened. She didn't waste time reacting to accusations. She didn't swing at every attack. She moved with surgical precision, quietly gathering facts, observing the opposition, and waiting. Because she knew that when your calm is real, it becomes disruptive. It unsettles those who rely on chaos to win. Her defining moment came during a nationally televised trial, defending a teenager falsely accused of a violent crime. The public wanted blood. The media spun narratives. Commentators speculated daily. But Natalia never blinked. While others played to the crowd, she played to the truth, every day. She arrived early, prepared, poised, purposeful, and when the time came to deliver her closing argument, she didn't raise her voice. She simply told the truth with such controlled fire that even her opponents had to respect it. The verdict, not guilty. The courtroom erupted, but Natalia, she nodded once and walked out with the same calm she walked in with. That's the power of emotional clarity. Not reacting out of impulse, but responding from wisdom. Because true calm isn't just stillness, it's strength under full control. It's not apathy, it's awareness. It's knowing that when you don't give chaos your energy, it dies in your silence. Natalia's approach became legendary. Judges leaned in, clients trusted her without question, and adversaries feared her, not because she fought dirty, but because she never let them provoke her. She moved through storms like still water. Understand this. The world doesn't fear volume, it fears presence. And calm presence is the rarest form of power. It doesn't rush, doesn't argue, doesn't defend itself unnecessarily. It simply wins, quietly, completely. Calm is not an action, it's intentional action. It's energy that's been tempered and refined. And when the fire inside burns steady, nothing outside can set you off course. There was another presence. Like that, a man named Tobias Grant. A quiet investor who built an empire without ever announcing his moves. In a world where everyone seemed obsessed with being seen, Tobias moved in shadows. He let curiosity do the marketing and let results speak the only language he needed. Early in his journey, he learned this truth. When people don't know what moves you, they can't control you. While others boasted, Tobias observed. While others exposed their plans, he exposed nothing. His meetings were brief, his words measured, his strategy impenetrable. Once, during a volatile negotiation, a rival CEO tried baiting him into conflict. Loud accusations, public statements, even leaked emails designed to trigger a reaction. But Tobias never responded. Not once. No press release, no interview, just silence. And while the media speculated, Tobias made one quiet move behind the scenes. That shut the entire opposition down, not with noise, but with strategy. He used the power of stillness like a blade. The less people knew, the more they feared. Tobias used to say, "Let them speak. I'll let the outcome speak louder." That's the lesson. When you stop explaining, start executing, and let your silence speak for you, you gain control. Because every word you offer is a window into your strategy. Every reaction is a map of your triggers. And every emotional slip is a crack in your foundation. Restraint is not weakness. It's the discipline of those who've mastered their ego. The world wants to provoke you. It thrives on your reaction. And the moment you stop giving it what it wants, you become untouchable. Tobias wasn't cold. He was calculated. He understood the value of privacy in a world that gives everything away for attention. His empire was built on mystery, not because he had something to hide, but because he had something to protect. That's what emotional mastery is. Protection. Protection of your focus, your energy, your goals. When you don't hand your power to every critic, every disruption, every comment, you multiply your strength. You move like a chess master while others play checkers. Here's the truth. Silence creates tension. Stillness creates doubt. And both create power when you know how to wield them. So when you walk into rooms where people expect you to fold, don't. When people bait you with disrespect, smile and say nothing. When the world shouts, choose to whisper, because that whisper, when backed by action, shakes more than a scream ever could. Understand the edge you gain by being unreadable. Learn to protect your vision with silence. Let people think you're passive until they realize you're the storm. There's a kind of stillness that's louder than shouting, not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't need it. That's the level where composure becomes dominance, where self-control becomes strategy. And few understood this better than Malik Rivers, a brilliant mind, who almost destroyed himself chasing intensity over intention. Malik had the raw genius most people only dream of. Creative, visionary, intellectually unstoppable, but emotionally undisciplined. Early in his 20s, his temper was as legendary as his talent. He could win the room with an idea and lose the deal with an outburst. When people challenged him, he fired back. When they questioned him, he burned bridges. His emotions weren't just present, they ran the show. Then came the unraveling. A public argument with his co-founder during a live stream, one heated moment that spiraled into scandal. Investors fled, partnerships collapsed, and the brand he had built from the ground up began to fall apart. Not because of market forces, but because of emotional instability. In that silence that followed, when the phones stopped ringing, when meetings were canceled, when no one returned messages, Malik met his truth. He stared in the mirror and said, "If I don't lead my emotions, they will end everything I've built." That was the pivot. He didn't disappear to hide. He disappeared to refine. Studied neuroscience, practiced breath control, meditated before meetings, tracked his triggers like data points, learned to pause before speaking, to observe before reacting, and over time, he rewired himself, not into someone different, but into someone controlled. When he re-emerged, people noticed the change, not in his words, but in his silence, not in his presence, but in his poise. He wasn't just smarter, he was quieter, more composed, more exact. He became the kind of leader who could walk into chaos and make the room settle with a single glance. He didn't stop feeling. He just stopped obeying those feelings. That's maturity. That's mastery. Malik used to tell young leaders, "Your emotions are valid, but they are not instructions." And that's the trap most fall into, mistaking a momentary feeling for a permanent truth. The text message that ruins a week. The email that sparks a war. The ego that can't let go of being slighted. It's all emotion, hijacking logic. But when you learn to let emotions inform you, not command you, everything changes. You stop destroying what you've built over what you feel. You stop reacting to people who don't matter. And you start moving with power, not panic. That's the real victory. To feel everything, but be moved only by vision. This isn't suppression. It's sovereignty. It's standing in the middle of a storm and choosing which winds matter. It's looking at someone who insults you and thinking, "You're not worth my direction." It's receiving bad news and responding with clarity, not collapse. There's strength in that kind of restraint, and the world respects it, because most people don't have it. There's another name you should know. Noah Reyes. In his early 30s, Noah was a rocket in the tech industry. Fast, brilliant, charismatic, but volatile, known for lashing out when things didn't go his way, known for firing off emails that burned bridges he hadn't even walked on yet. In one infamous moment, a live product demo hit a technical snag. Instead of staying composed, Noah exploded on his team in front of investors. The room went cold. The deal fell through, not because of the glitch, but because of his reaction. To it, his CTO quit the next day. Key engineers followed. One investor said, "I don't doubt the tech, I doubt the leadership." That hit Noah like a punch to the soul. For weeks, he vanished from view. Not to run, but to reset. He began reviewing his emotional patterns the same way he reviewed code, line by line, searching for bugs. He stopped blaming, started breathing, practiced saying less, pausing more. When he re-emerged, he wasn't louder, he was more precise. No wasted energy, no drama, just decisions made in quiet confidence. His silence became magnetic. The less he said, the more people leaned in. Because people follow the ones who remain composed under pressure. Noah often said, "Every outburst takes a piece of your credibility." And it's true. Every flinch, every snap, every emotional spasm erodes trust. And trust, once lost, takes years to earn back. In leadership, people don't just follow ideas, they follow example. And the person who controls themselves earns the right to lead others. Noah became a better CEO, not by changing his mind, but by training his emotions. The fire still burned, but it was no longer wild. It was aimed. And here's what you must understand. The louder you are, the less you're heard. The more reactive you are, the less you're respected. But the one who holds their power, who chooses stillness over spectacle, becomes unshakable. So if you want respect, master your reaction. If you want influence, master your emotions. Because the real test isn't what you do when it's easy. It's what you choose when everything around you tries to pull you apart. In a world addicted to noise, the calm mind becomes the rarest and most powerful force. Be that force. There's a reason the most powerful players never show all their cards. Because when people know too much about you, they start to shape your outcomes. The true masters, they don't hide out of fear. They stay quiet out of strategy. That was the way of Elise Monroe, a former intelligence analyst who quietly turned herself into one of the most influential minds in modern business. Her rise didn't happen in the spotlight. It happened in silence. After a national investigation accidentally leaked her name, Elise watched her privacy evaporate overnight. Strangers made assumptions. Journalists dug for dirt. Social media filled in blanks with fiction. But instead of fighting back, Elise made a choice to disappear. Not physically, mentally, strategically. She removed her presence from every public platform, changed her routines, protected her patterns, and in doing so, she unlocked a truth that few are ever disciplined enough to discover. The less they know, the less control they have. While others rushed to prove themselves, Elise rewrote the rules. She stopped announcing her next move, stopped broadcasting her opinions, and started operating with surgical discretion. While others posted their progress, Elise built in silence, and that silence became her fortress. Within a few years, she quietly held equity in a string of thriving companies, sat on the boards of firms that shaped industries, became a sought-after strategist, all while maintaining a level of mystery that made her nearly untouchable. Her competitors couldn't attack what they couldn't see, couldn't copy what they couldn't understand, couldn't challenge what wasn't on display. That's what made Elise formidable. She knew that exposure invites interference. Elise often said, "They can't shoot what's not in the open," and she meant it. Because when you overexpose, you offer up your vision for judgment. You become predictable, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. But when you reserve your energy, hold your insights, limit your availability, you multiply your advantage. Not because you're playing small, but because you're playing deep. This is a world that idolizes oversharing, that praises vulnerability without discernment. But Elise knew better. Vulnerability without boundaries is not strength, it's self-sabotage. Your dreams deserve protection. Your plans deserve privacy. So, ask yourself, what parts of your life are you offering up to people who haven't earned access? What battles are you fighting in public that could have been avoided with silence? Because the moment you stop feeling the need to explain everything to justify your vision, your timing, your boundaries, is the moment you reclaim your power. That's what Marcus Ellison discovered, a rising legal mind who spent years trying to clarify his every decision to everyone. He wanted to be understood, to be seen clearly, to be respected for what he was actually building, not for the assumptions others made. But no matter how clear he was, how thoughtful his responses were, people twisted his words, doubted his motives, spread half-truths. Then came the breaking point, a smear campaign during a pivotal case. Despite his professionalism, despite logic, despite calm explanations, the public turned, not because of facts, but because of perceptions. Exhausted, Marcus retreated from the noise, and in that quiet, he saw what he had missed all along. Some people aren't interested in the truth, they're interested in the drama. Some people listen only to misunderstand. Some minds are closed before you open your mouth, and that's when he stopped explaining. not because he didn't care, but because he refused to waste strength proving himself to people committed to doubting him. He redirected all that energy inward, into his work, his family, his focus. And slowly, something powerful happened. His reputation restored, not through more talking, but through relentless consistency, through integrity in silence, through letting results be his rebuttal. Marcus began teaching others a simple mantra. You don't owe everyone an explanation, just an example. That's the key. People don't need more of your words. They need more of your walk. If your actions don't convince them, your explanations never will. And the ones who matter, they're watching your steps, not your speeches. Let go of the need to be constantly understood, because clarity doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from standing firmer. And when your life becomes the proof, no defense is needed. That's emotional freedom. That's power. To be misjudged and still unmoved. To be doubted and still undeterred. To be slandered and still soaring. Because in the end, the truth doesn't need to be defended by noise. It just needs time. When you protect your energy, protect your vision, protect your peace, not by force, but by refusal, you rise, quietly, consistently, unapologetic ally. So, stop seeking closure from those who've already closed their minds. Stop chasing validation from those who feed on your insecurity. Stop explaining your every move to those who only want to debate it. Be still, be silent, be solid, because the most powerful silence is the one that says, I no longer need your permission to be who I am. In a world that celebrates constant visibility, the rarest strength is knowing when not to show up. Presence is power, but only when it's intentional. And no one understood that better than Sophia Lane, a global entrepreneur whose rise didn't come from always being accessible, but from learning when to be deliberately unavailable. Early in her journey, Sophia was like many high achievers, responsive, overcommitted, trying to prove her worth by being everywhere at once. Every opportunity, every meeting, every request got a yes. She said yes, until she was buried under the weight of everyone else's agenda. She burned out. Her creativity vanished. Her decision-making faltered. She had lost the one thing that mattered most, sovereignty over her own time. And that's when she changed everything. Sophia began doing what others feared. She started saying no. She shut off her phone during creation hours, declined invitations that didn't align with her vision, let emails wait, let messages go unanswered, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment, because she realized that being accessible to everyone meant being absent from her own mission. That's the paradox. The more available you are, the less valuable your presence becomes. The more you scatter your energy, the less depth you bring to any single thing. But when you protect your availability, you enhance your influence. When you become rare, you become respected. Clients began to wait longer for her. Partners started listening more intently. Why? Because she wasn't everywhere. She was exactly where she needed to be, and nowhere else. Sophia would often say, "You teach people how to treat your time by how you treat it first." And she lived by that. This wasn't about being unreachable. It was about being undistracted. It was about choosing presence over pressure, clarity over chaos, results over reaction. She didn't vanish out of neglect. She vanished to build legacy, because that's what focused discipline does. It removes you from noise. It frees you from distraction. It elevates you above the constant demand to respond. If you want to lead, if you want to build something that endures, you must become deeply intentional about your time, your attention, your presence. You must practice the discipline of availability. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every opportunity is aligned with your destiny. And not every call needs to be answered. Your power isn't just in what you give, it's in what you withhold. This truth echoes through every story you've heard. The ones who rise, they don't rise because they never felt pain, or doubt, or disrespect. They rise because they chose not to be ruled by it. They mastered the art of restraint. They embraced the power of silence. They elevated above reaction. They trained their emotions to serve them, not sabotage them. They didn't they didn't overshare. They didn't overreact. They moved with calm. They chose privacy over performance. They led with stillness, not spectacle. And you can too. Right now, at this very moment, you can decide that you will no longer hand away your power with every reaction, that you will no longer explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding, that you will no longer be available to every demand that distracts you from your mission. You can choose to walk with the kind of presence that speaks louder than any outburst, the kind of calm that becomes your command, the kind of silence that makes people lean in, not pull away. You can choose to act as if nothing disturbs you, not because you're pretending, but because you've prepared, because you've trained, because you've grown. This is not about being cold. It's about being clear. It's not about being fake. It's about being focused. It's not about hiding. It's about owning your space so completely that you no longer need to beg the world to understand it. And when you do that, when you choose calm over chaos, purpose over pride, response over reaction, everything changes. Doors open. Respect grows. Your energy multiplies, and your legacy becomes unstoppable. Because here's the truth. Peace is not weakness. Calm is not surrender. Stillness is not passivity. They are all signs of mastery. And mastery is what the world follows. So choose now. Choose to carry your composure like armor. Choose to make silence your strength. Choose to guard your time like treasure. Choose to respond only when it's aligned with your purpose. Because your greatest victory will not be over others. It will be over your own impulses. Your most valuable reputation won't come from applause. It will come from self-respect. Your true power will never come from how loud you can be. It will come from how still you can stay when everything around you begs for noise. So from this day forward, act as if nothing shakes you, because you've anchored yourself. Speak only when needed, because your words now carry weight. Let people wonder, because your mystery has become your edge. And move through life with a presence that makes no announcements, but leaves no doubt. Because in the end, those who master themselves master everything.